Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Thursday, March 26th, which I suppose is the real opening day for Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, baseball's back. Not Toronto Blue Jays baseball just yet. We will certainly dive into many things Blue Jays in this episode, but nonetheless, a lot of baseball on the TV today.
Yes, it is opening day, but also kind of not opening day, but also the Jays opening day is tomorrow. So it's the second opening day of three open. Anyways, baseball's back and it's very exciting. Very excited to have baseball back because I'm sure you are the listeners. I'm sure you are, Zach, my co-host. Yes, it's great to have baseball, meaningful, real baseball back on the television.
Yes, we are here today. We're going to go through our Blue Jays season preview, a annual event at this point. Before we get into it, though, if there's anything that you do enjoy hearing throughout the episode, we would really appreciate if you hit the subscribe buttons on YouTube or a follow wherever you get your podcasts. Would really help us to grow as we head into what is our third or fourth season of the podcast here. So I just wanted to get that in before we get underway. But Jori, I mean, we both kind of have our bold predictions, some over-unders, our season picks laid out. But before we get into that, I mean, there is certainly some news that we need to get to today. Do you want to start with the extensions or do you want to start with the opening day roster?
Well, let's look at the 26-man roster here because that's, I think, the big one. If you can call either of these real earth-shattering news, but the Blue Jays opt to go with Davis Schneider over Leo Jimenez, who gets designated for assignment, and the final bullpen spot goes to Rule 5 pick Spencer Miles over previous Rule 5 pick Angel Bastardo. So the Blue Jays finalizing their 26-man roster, which I mean, not shocking on either of those fronts. Maybe the Spencer Miles one, a little bit surprising, but it seemed like that was where they were headed, kind of either way on both of those fronts. I don't know if you saw that tweet make the rounds about David Schneider having a banner being hung up outside of the dome. I don't suspect the marketing department has any say in roster decisions, but it seemed like that was probably the most likely decision at that point.
Yeah, so to me, there was never really a question of who the 13 position players were going to be. I think the Leo Jimenez stuff was them bringing him along because he was out of options and they had to designate him for assignment, was them carrying him until basically the final moment that they had to make a decision on him to maybe work out a trade or, give them a better chance of passing him through waivers when, many players are on waivers and, teams are kind of set with their 40-man rosters. So I think that was kind of the case with him. Obviously, Angel Bastardo, kind of a similar thing, although that news did come sooner for us as they took Spencer Miles and Chase Lee north to Toronto to, I would imagine prolong those processes as well. I think, yeah, the Schneider one, I'm not surprised at all. He was, like a 127 WRC plus bat in 2025 and a guy who, like he was a key piece of that team down the stretch. And it would have been, I think, a little awkward if he was not a part of this team on opening day. And, ultimately, I think when you look at asset management, I believe it was, as John Schneider put it, like they had to make some tough decisions as far as assets go, right? DFAing Jimenez and Bastardo. We'll see how the Bastardo thing plays out. Obviously, he has to clear waivers first, and then he has to be offered back to the Red Sox. And of course, the Blue Jays can make a trade for his full rights, but we'll see how that all comes along. And then Miles, Miles or Chase Lee, to me, that was kind of where they decided we don't want to lose all of these pieces at once.
Yeah, the Spencer Miles one, I think, is the more interesting one. I'll be really interested to see what he's got in store here this first month. As a Rule 5 guy, got to stay on the roster the whole year, barring injury, which gives them a little bit of flexibility, but not really much. So it will be really fascinating to see exactly, if he's able to stick, if he's a piece that the Jays actually choose to use. I think of Rule 5 picks in the Blue Jays' recent history, and it's basically Joe Biagini and nobody else. So Spencer Miles doesn't have a huge bar to clear, but we've kind of seen the blueprint for what a successful Rule 5 pick looks like. And the hope, I guess, for the Jays is that, you had to decide between Bastardo and Miles, and there's just a little bit more they maybe like about Miles, and that's ultimately why they go that direction as opposed to the maybe a bit more raw, maybe a bit more stuffy, but a little bit more question marks that are attached to Angel Bastardo.
Yeah, I actually kind of thought that Bastardo had maybe kind of put himself in the driver's seat for that spot, just kind of with the way that his stuff had looked. The velo was obviously really encouraging, but yeah, I mean, Miles, he threw more innings in spring training than he had thrown in a professional setting since 2022. So we'll kind of see how that looks. This is a guy who hasn't thrown a pitch above low A in his baseball career. So will be really interesting to see kind of what his usage is. I would imagine it is very low leverage. I would imagine that they said they were kind of looking for a multi-inning guy, and he certainly kind of was ramped up to that towards the end of spring. So we'll kind of see how he slots in and what that all looks like. But to me, I think the decision ultimately comes down to them not wanting to lose all of these pieces at once, and you'll give Miles a shot, and if it doesn't work, then you'll have to kind of adjust and go from there.
Yeah, and same goes for the hitting side, right? Where it becomes a question of, you had options on Schneider, but the better asset very
Yeah.
clearly between those two in terms of ability contributing to, excuse me, to contribute today would have been David Schneider. It wasn't Leo Jimenez. Now, Leo Jimenez has done really great stuff at the AAA level, also just hasn't stayed healthy.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if a team like the White Sox, like the Rockies, gave him a
It's
whirl.
it's giving Otto Lopez,
I
basically.
thought that too. And funny enough, you compare the two. Leo Jimenez's prospect savant page, it's a lot prettier than Otto Lopez's.
Yeah.
So, like, listen, would it be really nice to be able to keep Leo Jimenez? Yes. But, the best case scenario for him might be Otto Lopez. But that's not a given at this stage.
Yeah.
And the Jays, for them, you've seen what David Schneider can do. It makes no sense to send him to AAA for a real question mark when, you would just presumably be delaying the inevitable, which would be Leo Jimenez eventually either being hurt and calling David Schneider up or not playing well and getting DFA'd regardless.
Yeah, I think the Josh Kasevich of it all plays into that as well, where having Kasevich kind of emerge as this really nice story in spring helps all that along because that is a guy who's in the high minors that you can call on eventually. It's funny because Kasevich is older than Leo Jimenez, which you would never think given the points that their careers are at, but. Yeah, we'll kind of see how that all plays out. I would imagine that we'd certainly see Kasevich in the big leagues this year at some point, whether it's a injury or underperformance or just kind of needing that guy that can kind of be your third string shortstop because Ernie Clement will be playing a lot of second base this year, but he will also be the de facto backup shortstop. So we'll see. I think Kasevich and Jimenez, like to me, kind of similar-ish players. Jimenez obviously had his timeline advanced a little bit earlier because he was, so advanced with the glove and everything at such a young age in the minors, and they burned through those option years really quick. So we'll see if he ends up somewhere else, if he's able to clear. Like I said, obviously a lot of guys on waivers at this point, but to your point, I think this is a guy who has a good glove up the middle, has a pretty solid on base ability, and has a little bit of pop that hasn't quite come through at the major league level. So we'll kind of see where he does or how that all unfolds.
Yeah, and like I said, this is a guy that will probably get a shot somewhere, but remains to be seen exactly how much he'll get the chance to contribute in the next, call it a month or two.
Yeah. What do you think about Bastardo? You think he gets claimed, given back to the Red Sox, or the Jays trade for his rights?
I don't think anyone's taking a Rule 5 pick off of waivers. I think
So
the
with him, because he was injured all of 2025, he only has to be on the active roster for 90 days.
that's still 3 months. I think that's still a big ask. I think it's
Yeah.
a big ask to tell a team you've got a bullpen piece that's untouchable for all intents and purposes until basically, you know, what we're calling it the end of June. We're calling it here. I just don't think that it's going to happen. I think that what's likely going to happen here is he'll either be offered back to the Red Sox and they'll pay the 50 grand that, they'll make back in beer sales during the second inning of their season opener, or they will, trade for his rights after he's offered back to the Red Sox. Uh, but even at that, it seems like that's an unlikely scenario because, why give a free prospect back to the Blue Jays that they've just
Yeah.
spent the last, year developing for you on their behalf?
You know what's funny is like, I mean, I think of if I was like the Rockies, that would be a spot where I'd be like, yeah, we'll take a shot on a guy like that.
Well, a team like the Rockies could use the upside.
Yeah.
A team like the Blue Jays, you were never going to carry two Rule 5 guys, and it's even a surprise they're carrying one.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's move on. Another obviously newsy topic that we have yet to discuss on the pod is John Schneider and Ross Atkins are both extended. I think we knew these were comings. Ross Atkins gets a 5-year deal. John Schneider gets a 2-year extension. So, nice to not for them not to enter 2026 having kind of that lame duck status. But what did you kind of think when the news dropped? And were you surprised at all?
No surprise whatsoever. This is clearly what was going to happen. We had heard all throughout, kind of even like last summer, as far back as even like July and August, that both of these guys were comfortable, that both of them felt like they were going to get deals done. Never a concern. I think that there was ever going to be any uncertainty on these fronts, and good for them that they're able to get the deals done. At the end of the day, a contract has never been a prohibitive factor in if a decision needs to be made on their futures and whatnot. I mean, it keeps some stability in place, which very clearly is something that the Blue Jays value, the continuity of it all. And to have these guys reach a World Series last year, it's tough not to look at them and kind of feel like you've got the right bodies in place at this point.
Yeah, it's incredible too that we got to this point, considering, as we sat here doing this very same exercise 12 months ago, where this organization was at for them to now be in a position where, Shapiro is extended, Adkins is extended, and Schneider is extended, coming off a World Series run, and we enter, this season talking about the Blue Jays as World Series favorites compared to last year, where we were wondering if Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s future would be in Toronto. Obviously, Bo Bichette ends up landing elsewhere, but just the incredible turnaround. And I mean, obviously, those three are very due credit for that turnaround and well-deserved extensions. And but I mean, of course, as you said, doesn't prevent them from fulfilling all the years of those deals.
Yeah, I mean, this is there's little less meat on this bone, but all in all, it's nice to get those deals squared away before opening day.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on. More of the season preview-y type stuff before we kind of get into, over-unders and bold predictions, everything like that. I just want to ask you, I mean, what are your general feelings on the season and kind of expectations for where this club will land up and kind of what you think is most important for them to, maybe not repeat what happened in 2025, but kind of build on what happened in 2025.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's hard to win in the world of Major League Baseball. And you would think for the Jays, a successful season next year is, bare minimum a postseason appearance. Now, is that going to be a division win? I think that's a big ask. Certainly think it's possible. Don't know if it's a guarantee. But getting to the postseason and finding a way to, win a round, get close. That's what success to me will be defined by. And, on the route to that, it's going to take probably 90 wins to get to that point. If not 90 wins, certainly in that kind of area code. Otherwise, you're likely to kind of be a bit of a postseason afterthought. I think for the Jays, it's going to be all about how the hitting will basically perform with the absence of Bo Bichette and the absence of another big bat like a Kyle Tucker who is not here after all of the hand wringing that this winter provided. And then outside of that, it's going to be how the pitching is, specifically the rotation, which last year was a real Achilles heel and looked really deep to start this year, and all of a sudden is down three pretty substantial arms. It creates the question of, are they going to have enough gas in the tank to sustain that in the early goings of this season? And if they are able to do so, then I would expect that this is a team that will very comfortably make the postseason. But, and that big but is going to be how they navigate this first, call it about a month, without a lot of those guys pitching every 5 days.
Yes, very nice for them to have like the soft landing to opening the season. Obviously you go A's, Rockies, White Sox. I don't think you could ask for a much better first 9 games. But then of course the Dodgers come to town, so certainly will be very intriguing to see how they open the year and see kind of how they build on obviously their postseason run. And I think for me kind of one of the biggest storylines that I'll be following and interested to see how it plays out is, of course, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in 2026 and what the shape of his season looks like. Obviously, I don't think that he's going to be the what was his WRC plus in the postseason, like 242 or something. I don't think he's going to be ripping that out over the course of 162. But if there's a time for Vlad to take the leap from star to best hitter in baseball type player, this is certainly the year one of his 14 season extension and the year where he will be doing it alone. No more Bo Bichette. It is undoubtedly Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s franchise.
Yeah, he will have to be the aircraft carrier, as I think the term gets thrown around. But I certainly think it's within the realm of possibilities.
All right, so before we dive into, I wanted to just lay this out. I mean, Fangraphs, of course, season projections. Blue Jays, they have them projected to finish third in the AL East with 85 wins, which ultimately, does get them into the postseason, but has them behind the Yankees and Red Sox, which is interesting to say the least, I suppose. Obviously, it shows the depth of the division. Fangraphs gives them a 52.8% chance of making the playoffs, which again, I think is a little bit low considering I think, to me, they improved so much on the pitching side. I think you look at just having the stability in the rotation this year that they didn't have last year, and then I think the bullpen as well is obviously better entering the season, and obviously as you mentioned the Bo Bichette of it all certainly raises some questions in the lineup, but I think when you look at the likes of Kazuma Okamoto, a full season of Addison Barger, hopefully full season of Dalton Varsho, who, obviously has the injury risk. It's just always interesting to see how all these things line up.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have this as one of our over-unders, but I like the over on that 85.
I did put it there and we can use this as a way to transition into our over-unders, but the bet MGM over-under for Blue Jays wins this season is 88 and a half. So I wonder where you fall on that one.
That's a tougher one. That's a tougher one. And there's a reason that the betting companies have the much tougher line. To me, I'm looking at that and I think that, you could finish under that and A, still make the postseason, and B, still finish with 88 wins, which would be another really strong season, albeit not quite the heights that this season provided, or excuse me, last season provided. I think I liked the under on that by maybe a hair, but I think that's about a push. That's pretty much where I like them to finish. I think somewhere in that 88 win range is really what I'm kind of eyeing up with a small outside chance to finish a little bit above that.
Yeah, I mean last year 94 wins, and they had, I mean, what was it like? What was the final comeback total? Like 42 comeback wins or something like that. Like obviously very tough to do that once again. And I think you take, I'll take the over, but more as like 89 90 than 95 96 kind of finishing there. I know we both kind of had three over unders laid out, so we can just kind of go back and forth and trade them here. I'll let you kind of carry over your first one.
All right. Now you're gonna have to give me a moment here, but I'll see if I can kind of lay this out for you.
Spin the web.
Which will be higher or lower, or rather, which will be higher? Dylan Cease's combined innings pitched and strikeouts for the year,
Okay.
or the total innings pitched combined of Bieber, Savage, Barrios?
Wow. Okay. So Cease. Yeah, this is interesting. I like that you always go this way with it because it's really a thinker. So Bieber, Savage, and Barrios innings pitched, or Cease innings pitched and strikeouts. So Cease, I'm thinking that you're able going to be able to lock in like 200 some strikeouts, right? He hasn't finished with below 200 strikeouts since becoming a full-time starter. I would imagine that his innings pitched increases from last year from 168 to around the 180 range. So, that certainly puts us creeping towards 400 total there. So do you Savage, Barrios, and Bieber get to 400 innings pitched?
And it's also a bit of a question of how much will they protect Savage, and will
Yeah.
Barrios last the season?
Yeah. So, I think this is interesting because those three guys, if they all come back healthy, there's 1,000 rotation questions that come up, right? So looking at it, I mean, to me, Savage is like max 140 regular season innings, and with the injury to start the year, I'd probably look closer to like 110, 120 as kind of a maximum number there. Barrios, I just don't really know what to expect there. I would imagine that, a stress fracture in your elbow doesn't lend itself very well to a quick recovery to getting back onto a mound, and Bieber, we just have no idea what the timeline looks like there, and kind of how he's progressing. So I think I'm going to take Cease. I think kind of as we enter the year, Savage is the one that I would feel the most comfortable about, getting back onto a mound in a timely fashion. But with that said, he's also the one that they are going to be the most hands-on with as far as his innings go. So I'm going to take Dylan Cease's strikeouts plus innings pitched.
I think that's the sensible pick. And it probably, if I were doing it myself, would say the same. But I think there's a real possibility those numbers will be right around each other.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting on the rotation front, exactly how that folds out. And the question is maybe put on pause with all the injuries, but certainly doesn't go away.
Yeah, the Bieber one is kind of, I think, the wild card there as to where, you just don't really know what his situation is going to turn out to be. So, with that said, I mean, I'll toss one of my over-unders at you. It comes on the starting pitching side as well. And it is Max Scherzer starts for the Blue Jays this year because I think, this certainly ties into the injury situation, and obviously, kind of with him being a guy who maybe isn't a favorite to come out of the rotation. I set the line there at 19 and a half.
Yeah, I'm slamming the over on that. That's easy. I basically was going to say if it's over 23, over 24, it's an easy over for me. I think this is a guy that's going to pitch all year for these Blue Jays. I don't know if he'll last the whole year as, a staple in the rotation, but I think combined with injuries and the fact he's come into spring healthy, and it seems like he was ready to ramp up and ready to go. And by all accounts, the thumb stuff is behind him now, thanks to his musical
Piano.
chops
Yeah.
now. Well, you sound not as convinced as I am, but to me, this is easily a 150 inning season for Max Scherzer, bearing any injuries to kind of the elbow or anything of that sort, which are a big ask. But I think this is a guy that's going to be a pretty key part of this Blue Jays rotation, at least more important than a lot of people have him penciled for to
Yeah.
start the season.
So with him, it's really interesting because I think the over under it's either going to be way under or way over. I don't think there's a situation where he's coming in. I mean, I guess injury could kind of play into this, but I think that the situation is either he maybe gets hurt and doesn't quite you know isn't able to kind of reach the 20 range of starts, or he's healthy and he's out there every day or every fifth day for most of the season. I kind of wonder, I don't want to put this as an over-under, but I mean, kind of ERA wise, what is your kind of expectation there? Obviously, last year he finishes with a 5.19, where, he just kind of collapsed in the second half of the year. But I think if you look at once he initially came back from the thumb injury last year and kind of, the bulk of his starts, I think it was like eight or nine starts, whereas ERA was like 3.2 or something like that. And we were talking about him as, a locked in playoff starter, which of course, he eventually ended up being for them. But, it was certainly a lot different of a conversation after the end of the year when he was, giving up 7 runs and not getting out of the first inning against Kansas City Royals.
I'm eyeing up this Justin Verlander season from last year, and he finished last year with a 3.85 ERA, pitched 152 innings, had a FIP under four, 8 strikeouts per 9, 3 walks per 9. Just a perfectly cromulent season, I guess is the word I'll use. Listen, it wouldn't be ace level Scherzer, just like that wasn't ace level Verlander, but by no means do I think that Scherzer is capital C cooked. And I think if you can get something like this, I think if you can get an ERA maybe under four, I think if you can get a FIP specifically, really under four, I think you're happy.
Yeah. I mean, he's just kind of got to cut out the home runs, right? Like the home runs were just like such a major issue for him at the end of last year. And I think John Schneider keeps saying if we can get like the postseason Scherzer where he had, a 3.77 ERA over his postseason starts, then they would take that. And I think that would probably be kind of an ideal spot for him to finish. So you want to go with your next one?
Yeah, I'll go with my next one here. Uh, Blue Jays defense, obviously, some
Oh,
shuffling
okay.
around the entire diamond. The key pieces you would think are probably still there, but defense is a fickle thing. Last year they finished fourth in DRS, over under the fifth and a half ranked defense for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Hmm. I like this one because your initial reaction is over, right? Varsho, Jimenez, Clement, Kirk up the middle lends itself very well to this. But this year, you're looking at a lot of Jesus Sanchez in the outfield. You're looking at Kazuma Okamoto at third base, which we are, obviously spring training looked nice and he made a couple nice plays in the World Baseball Classic, but we'll see what it looks like in the dog days of June and July. So over under four. I mean, I'll still take the top five because the full season of Varsho, obviously will be very nice for that. A full season of Andres Jimenez at shortstop will certainly be an improvement over Bo Bichette, which also adds Ernie Clement up the middle. So I'll take the over, but I don't think it's as clean or as easy of a yes as you think.
Yeah, I think the Jesus Sanchez and the Kazuma Okamoto uh, left side or whatever you want to call it of the diamond could be could take some adjustment. Certainly won't be Nathan Lucas and Matt Chapman over at that side of the diamond this year if you really want to go back a little bit. But uh, I don't know if this is going to be a top five defense, but they certainly have the tools in the toolkit to get to that point.
Yeah, the if you were to give me Blue Jays up the middle defensive run saved, I'm saying maybe first in baseball, but obviously, the entire defense will be interesting to see. I wonder like Gold Glove wise, like how many Gold Gloves do we think they finish with? Like I think, you got candidates in Kirk, Vlad, is a candidate there. Ernie, I mean, him getting the chance to play just one position lends itself very well to that. Jimenez, I think a full season of him will certainly be worth worth watching to see kind of where the defensive metrics end up. Obviously, he's never played shortstop before, and I've kind of questioned why was he never the shortstop in Cleveland, given the fact that they just kind of haven't had a consistent situation there. Varsho in center field, obviously, a consistent Gold Glove candidate. I think the defense of certain center fielders will challenge him, namely Denzel Clark. So it'll be, Gold Gloves. I would imagine, if you were to give me over under Blue Jays Gold Gloves 2.5, I would take the over.
Okay. I get it. I get it. I think it'll be right in that kind of ballpark too. I think that there's definitely at least one to come. This is a team that's very clearly prioritized defense over the years.
Yes. All right. I will give you my next one, and it is Dalton Varsho related, but of course it is not Dalton Varsho defensively because he is one of the most intriguing offensive profiles on this team after what he did last year in just 71 games, hitting 20 home runs. And of course, this spring where he looked like a completely different hitter, hitting the balls to all fields. And, I think emerging as what is going to be this team's two-hole hitter against righties to start the year. Very interested to see how that all plays out. And, I think, how does he look in the larger sample is going to be a very interesting question. So for you, I have posed the over-under of home runs of 27 and a half. Basically, does he set a career home run number with a full season?
So there's two ways to look at this. There's the home run to fly ball rate, which was unsustainably high last year. And there's also that this is a different Dalton Varsho that is now trying to pull the ball in the air at all accounts. But also, we just saw in spring that that wasn't exactly what he was doing. So I'm really that's a good line you've set. I think I'm liking the over. I think he can get to 30 bombs. I think it would be a really good outcome if he got to 30 bombs. Uh, I'm not sure he's going to do it, but I do think he can. So I'll take the over on that one.
Yeah. So I'll take the under, but I mean not because I think he's going to have a bad season. I actually think he's going to be very productive in a contract year, but I think that his production is going to be less maybe home run reliant as we've seen him in spring talking about hitting the ball the other way, being able to have a little bit more success against lefties. I think that we might see him kind of take a leap with like a little bit more of like on base and average jump. I think obviously we've seen him I think last year between spring and every minor league level, he approached 30 home runs. So I think a full season, certainly, high 20s, I would imagine like 27, 26 or 26, 27 kind of feels like a good range for me to him, but or a good range for him to me. But I think if talking like WRC plus, I think I would almost lock in like an over 100 mark. As you mentioned, the home run to fly ball rate was a little unsustainable last year, and if he's going to be working the other way a little bit more often, then that will definitely come down as well. So he's such an interesting player for them this year, though.
He could end up their team leader in wins above replacement. It wouldn't surprise me, right? It's
Yeah.
the whole thing of if this is a guy that can be a league average or slightly above league average bat and can provide the Dalton Varsho defense that we've seen in perpetuity here, that's a 6-win player without even a shred of doubt. I mean, that's basically what Pete Crow Armstrong was last year.
And Pete Crow-Armstrong, $115 million extension the other day. Dalton Varsho playing for a contract. So certainly behooves him to have a good offensive season to, look more like a Pete Crow-Armstrong than a Harrison Bader.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode. I'll move here to my next uh, line here because I also think it's kind of related to this question of who will be the most valuable guy, where the homer's going to come from. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We talked about it. Could be a big year for him if he's anything like the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. we saw in the postseason and at the World Baseball Classic. Last year, failed to crack 30 bombs during the regular season. It's been a continued issue with him of pounding the ball into the dirt, but it's a new leaf for Vladdy, a new contract, a new mentality at the plate. 37 and a half home runs for Vladimir
37 and a
Guerrero
half.
Jr.
Whoa. Wow. So we haven't seen him do that since 2021. And he hasn't come particularly close. Are you taking the over on this?
I'm taking the over on this, and I'll get
Wow.
more into that in a moment here,
Okay.
but I'm taking the over.
Yeah, the thing is I just think that he's going to get off to such a hot start. I think that the easy schedule, the way that he's swinging the bat right now, I think you look at the World Baseball Classic, the postseason, the spring training, he's just kind of stopped striking out altogether, which is, certainly
A
incredible.
good
And
development.
and the home runs have been coming at a crazy rate. 37 and a half is just a lot of home runs for a guy who has topped 33 only one time in his career. Um,
Hit 8 bombs during the postseason.
he did, and then he hit, a couple at the World Baseball Classic. He hit one during spring training. Yeah, I honestly feel like 36, 37 again kind of feels kind of right in the target for me. So, I'll go under. It's not a substantial under, but like I mean, I do think, if you're looking at WRC plus again, this is a 160 type guy, but I mean, I'll let you kind of go if you're going over 37 and a half.
I'm going well over 37 and a half. And when we get into our bold predictions, I'll have some juice for you
All
there.
right. All right. So I've got one more over under for you. Of course, on the Bird's Eye View podcast, gotta have some prospect lines. So this one, obviously some recency bias with the JoJo Parker hype going around, but JoJo Parker's MLB pipeline end of season ranking over under the 20th best prospect in baseball.
If that's the case, what a season he'd be having. It's hard to take the over there, but man, he's showing some real juice here in spring. A lot of helium is, I think, what I would say is the term that I would use. It's so hard to say over because, I mean, goodness, you can't predict prospects. Um, but if it is the over, then my goodness, wouldn't that be such a story?
I'll take the over right now. Obviously, again, recency bias with what we've been seeing this spring, but I think you'll see enough graduations. He's in the 40s right now, and again, if he has a strong year as kind of this 19-year-old in single A, I think that he kind of has the potential to kind of emerge into like this top 10 prospect type, and the jump to like 18 or 19 isn't that far-fetched, I think.
The the thing that could hold him back is the climate in Vancouver. That's the one thing that I'll
Well,
say
does he
is
get
the
there though is the thing. Like do they just keep him in Dunedin to let him
I
let
mean,
him rake?
I have a hard time seeing that be the case. I think they'll want to challenge him at some point this year if he is
Yeah.
raking in Dunedin. And if he gets to Vancouver, I'm sure he'll be having some chats with Arjun Nimala about where to not hit the ball.
You have any other over-unders or are you ready to go bold predictions?
We can go bold predictions here. We can go bold
Okay.
predictions here.
All right. I'll let you start since I just hit you with the JoJo Parker.
Yeah, I'll go right back to that Vladdy discussion. And I'll say that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. ascends into the Aaron Judge territory of absolutely raking. Well, maybe not quite that territory, but I'll say Vladimir Guerrero Jr. with a 1,000 OPS season. That's my bold
Wow.
prediction. I
That would
mean,
be,
he
yeah.
looks like a different guy out there. He's raking. He stops striking out. The zone control, whatever you want to call it, his eye, whatever, looks like it's in the best kind of shape, so to speak, that it's been as a Blue Jay. This is a guy that's got nothing to worry about contractually. He's shown that he can do it at the biggest levels. It's his team. And to me, it spells all the, call it recipe, all the ingredients for a huge season for him. And I think he crosses the 1,000 OPS mark this year.
Wow. I mean, we were talking about Miguel Cabrera, right? And that's as kind of the pathway that you want Vladdy to follow. And this is about the time where Miggy kind of took off in his career. So obviously, you're hoping that the same thing happens for Vlad, where he's able to kind of take that leap. And I certainly do think that there is some sort of leap coming. If he's to take the leap into a 1,000 OPS hitter, that would be more than welcome for this Blue Jays team that is going to need that kind of offense. So I'm going to go to Dylan Cease for my first bold prediction, and I'm going to say that Dylan Cease leads the American League in strikeouts. I think bold for the factor that there is a Garrett Crochet and a Tarek Skubal in the AL. But for Cease, I think the interesting thing is last year I was looking at it, he was the only player in the top 20 of strikeouts to not throw 170 innings last year. And I think he was fifth in baseball with 215. And with the Blue Jays, of course, one of the things that they've been successful with doing with their pitchers is getting them, to take on an increased workload and work deeper in a game. So I would imagine, that Dylan Cease's 168 innings last year turns into a 190 kind of type inning season. And if he's able to, maintain the strikeout rate and everything like that, then we could be seeing him, launch into the 250 range of strikeouts that would kind of have him next to the Scoobles and the Ceases. Or
Yeah,
the Scoobles and the Crochets.
I'm eyeing up the Robbie Ray season from a couple of years back as something that I think for him seems like a really easy kind of target in terms of what you want to emulate. That it feels like obviously that would be a Cy Young season. That's not necessarily something that you can put to paper, but in terms of the makeup of these two guys, it really feels like a very, very similar path.
Yeah. It'll be I think he's again, the kind of he's gonna have to take over as the ace here. I think that we talked about the question marks in the pitching staff, right? And that's not, nothing to be said of the guys in the rotation, right? Kevin Gausman again coming off this huge workload, getting up there in age, right? So, is what does his season look like? You feel pretty good about him being a consistent starter, but I don't think that the, top three Cy Young finisher of Gausman is coming back. Scherzer obviously had his struggles last year. Cody Ponce is coming off a huge workload increase, is adjusting back to Major League Baseball. Not sure what that's going to look like. The Savage, the Barrios, and Bieber, you don't really need to talk about what the question marks are like there. And then Eric Lauer, of course, who knows where he's going to be at after last year being such an important piece, but maybe not being the perfect candidate to repeat that success.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of guys that have question marks attached to them. And Cease, I mean, not excluded from that group, had an ERA definitely on the high side
Yeah.
last year. But with that said, I mean, to me, seems like all indications are that he should and will be better with the Blue Jays. There's a reason they gave him $210 million this winter.
Yeah. All right, give me your second one.
So the Blue Jays, obviously, as we said, a team with a lot of defensive capability. They've got some really strong defense, obviously in the outfield, obviously on the infield. One of the names that we kind of brought up as a question mark, as a who knows how good he'll be, was Kazuma Okamoto, and exactly what he will provide on the defensive side of the ball. I am buying the hype that this guy will transition seamlessly and will be their second best defensive infielder,
Wow.
including the catcher, including all the infielders. So
Yeah.
obviously Dalton Varsho will be the best defender on this team. I don't think that much is in question, but in terms of the infielders, I think we're looking at him maybe not being the best, but certainly will be the second best
So
defensive
who's
infielder.
who's the best then? Is it Jimenez? Is it Clement?
I think Clement. I think for Jimenez is going to be a real test to see if he can transition smoothly to short. And any hiccup there, and it opens the door for a guy like a Kazuma Okamoto to be a contributor. I mean, there's a universe where Clement and Jimenez flip at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'll move on to my second one. I don't know. I guess this is bold-ish. But I will say Addison Barger is an all-star this season for the Blue Jays. I would imagine that the Blue Jays are going to fare very well in the fan vote when it comes to all-star starters, but I think Barger will certainly be there on merit. Last year, obviously, such a successful season for him. Like Vladdy, we saw him take a step with his chase in the regular or in the postseason, and I think for him, a guy who just hits the ball so hard, if he's able to take that leap against lefties as he did in the postseason. This is a guy that I think that we could see as like a 25 to 30 home run bat with 100 RBIs in the middle of this offense. So I think all-star, maybe like some all MLB kind of type love at the end of the year.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll get a little bit of that kind of 2015-ish Kansas City Royals propaganda making its way around for
Yeah.
these Blue Jays at the All-Star game. I think it's certainly a possibility. Yeah, Barger to me seems like a good bet to potentially make his first career All-Star game. I mean, if you want to talk a popular breakout pick on these Blue Jays, he's probably numero uno on that list.
Yeah. All right. Give me your next one.
So we've talked a lot about guys currently on the Blue Jays that we're expecting to be difference
I'm
makers.
glad that you're doing this because I have a similar one, I would imagine.
So once the trade deadline rolls around, always there's guys traded that no one expects to get dealt. And there's teams every year where the bottom falls out and it becomes evidently clear that this is not going to work long term. And the team I'm eyeing up this year as something of a bit of a could they fall apart this year?
Before you say this, I want to say, as you're talking through this, there's like a 70% chance that we have the exact same bold prediction right here.
I'm looking at the Houston
Okay,
Astros.
0% chance.
All right. I'm looking at the Houston Astros as a team that I think could have the bottom fall out. And I think of the Blue Jays and I think of where they've got some free agents and some money coming off the books. I'm sure you've put it together, and if you haven't, then I'll make it crystal clear. George Springer is a DH and is a free agent at the end of the season. You know who only has 2 years left on their deal? Yordan Alvarez. I'm just saying, if the bottom falls out in Houston, wouldn't that be a nice fit? A nice left-handed bat to complement Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as the Jays seek to make another run. And, they've got all this stuff kind of pitching wise that it seems like it's going to be a bit of a logjam. Hitting wise, they're missing a bat, aren't they? And this upcoming off season, there's Tarek Skubal as a free agent, but there's not that much on the hitting front behind like Dalton Varsho. So to me, I wonder if you're looking at a Gage Stanifer or a Johnny King or any number of guys and you try to dangle some of that and you go out, you take a big swing on Yordan Alvarez, who I think the Blue Jays will acquire at the trade
Wow.
deadline.
I mean, that would certainly be fun. Jordan, obviously, when healthy, just one of the best hitters in baseball, a terrifying presence. So, yeah, wouldn't complain about a Jordan acquisition at all.
Well, who do you think they're going to
Okay,
acquire?
so I thought we were going in the same direction, and then obviously we went very differently in the end. But again, same thing. I think the Blue Jays, they like to do their shopping early at the deadline, as we've seen in the past. I think that they proved to us in the offseason that they were looking for somebody with closing experience, and they were unable to acquire that. I actually believe in Jeff Hoffman this year, but I do think that there is maybe just a world where they want a little bit more of a certain thing at the back end of their bullpen and to take some of the pressure off Jeff Hoffman. And I think that the bullpen is obviously in a good spot, especially when Jimmy Garcia comes back, where you've got Louis Varland and Brendan Little who's throwing harder, and obviously Braden Fisher and Fluharty and all these guys. But my bold prediction is that Cade Smith is going to be the Blue Jays closer down the stretch.
I love that. I love that pick. Give me the sauce here. Give me
Yeah,
your
I mean, so it's the same thing as you, right? Like, I mean, the Guardians. I just don't think that they've got it this year. I think you look at there was some Cade Smith whispers last year to me, which kind of signaled, obviously the Stephen Kwan thing was all out there, but Cade Smith again is a reliever who had a very limited track record in the minors. You look at his minors to majors numbers, and they're just completely different. So I wonder, if Cleveland would look at that and say, we've worked him hard the past couple of years. Like they have worked him very, very hard. Um, so I wonder if they would kind of say, we're going to take a step back. Obviously, they just extended Jose Ramirez, so maybe the step back isn't quite coming, but I would imagine the way that they swing the bat, seems like a pretty easy pick for a team that's not going to make it back to the postseason, and so I wonder if there is going to be a bit of a fire sale for them, and if the Blue Jays are looking to get that piece at the back end of their bullpen that they can lock in forever. Obviously, the Canadian angle is, of course, fun, but I'm certainly sure that the Blue Jays front office isn't going to overpay just to get a Canadian closer. But I think Cade Smith would be a very nice addition and a guy who has postseason track record at this point and has closing experience and is just this really dominant force that would be very good looking in a Blue Jays jersey, especially in October.
Yeah, this all makes me kind of think this is a Blue Jays front office that has shied away from acquiring the big name at the trade deadline. So a very impromptu over under. Blue Jays acquire zero point 0.5 All-Stars at the trade deadline. I think we're both taking the over there.
I'm glad that we both went like kind of acquisition-y though with guys who maybe you don't expect. Do you have more? I think that was three for both of us. I have two
Well,
more written down, but
I've got one more, but it ties into my kind of standings prediction. So
okay, so we'll leave
it's up
that.
to you if you
I'm
want
gonna
to.
I'm gonna just I'll hit both of them real quick, both minor league ones for you. Dylan Cease, obviously I said leads the American League in Ks. I will say Johnny King leads the minor leagues in strikeouts
That's
this
a fun
year.
one.
Yeah, I don't think that's I think for him he'll obviously strike out a lot of people, and getting to Vancouver will help with that as well. So fun to see there. And then another bullpen one, Ryan Jennings is this year's Braden Fisher. So he'll be a guy who they rely on in the bullpen this year, and we'll kind of see how that all plays out.
Yeah, one of the over-unders I had, which I ultimately didn't kind of get anywhere with because I couldn't kind of get the machinations of it right, but something to the effect of how many guys from the opening day bullpen that pitch on
Yeah.
Friday are gonna be on the postseason roster. But it was too difficult to kind of figure out exactly what that looked like.
Yeah. I think that we did a pretty good job of like hitting the different areas of the roster. I obviously, we didn't talk Springer, we didn't talk Kirk, no Sanchez, Ernie, or Jimenez offensively, but I think overall we did a pretty good job there. So we can kind of move on to the um more forward-looking predictions. Do you want to start with awards or standings?
Let's start with standings because I think the
Okay.
standings will kind of lead their way to our picks for who's gonna win. Like manager of the year and things of
Yeah.
that nature, right?
All right, so give me your let's start National League. Obviously, save the American League for last. So give me your NL division winners and your three wildcard teams.
All right, so my NL East winner, I've got the New York Mets. Then in the Central, I'm looking at the Chicago Cubs, and of course in the NL West, who else but the Los Angeles Dodgers? So that's my three division winners. I think that it's pretty chalky, and you'll notice a bit of a theme here that there are some chalky picks, but so there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And then my wildcard teams. I know they're a little bit older. I know that there's a lot of kind of frustration around them, but I do think the Phillies are still a talented team. I think they're good enough to get into the postseason. Same goes for the San Diego Padres. I know there's a lot of frustration with them. I know there's a lot of kind of little brother syndrome with the Dodgers, but they are still a very talented ball club. And because I'm not going to just have every club return to the postseason, there's always someone stupid that makes it in. I like the Buccos to get in.
Oh, Paul
I think
Skeens
that
and
the I think that Paul Skeens and Bubba Chandler and Jared Jones when he's back, I think that the pitching will not be an issue. And I think they made a couple smart ads on the hitting front with guys like Ryan O'Hearn, with guys like Marcelo Ozuna. And then I think you got Connor Griffin waiting in the wings. He'll surely get a chance at some point this year. And I think that's a team that could get in with somewhere in like the 85, 86 range and just kind of squeak their way into the postseason.
so your wildcard teams were Pirates, Phillies,
Padres.
Padres. All right, no Brewers.
I just think that the Brewers, I know that they're always good, but I just don't understand it, and
Yeah.
I don't think they'll make it.
All right. So for me, my we are again aligned pretty well on this. My division winners are the same as yours: Mets, Cubs, and Dodgers. And then my wild card teams are the Phillies. I put the Brewers in, although I'm kind of with you where, you trade away Freddie Peralta, the rotation, is Jacob Mizorowski ready to kind of be that guy? Is Brandon Woodruff healthy? Is Brandon Sproat good? We'll see. I'm gonna put them in though. Tough to kind of dial them back that much. So Phillies, Brewers, and then I'm sending the Diamondbacks in this year. I think the offense there is obviously very good, and Corbin Carroll. I think if you're talking like kind of under the radar MVP picks, he could kind of be in the mix there. So
Yeah, I think there's a chance for ascension there to another
yeah,
level for him. Absolutely.
yeah. All right. American League. I will let you go.
All right, so my AL West winner, I've got the Seattle Mariners. Perhaps not a surprise, given that I kind of said that I think the bottom's about to fall out in Houston. In the AL Central, I like the Kansas City Royals. I think that Bobby Witt Jr., I think that Cole Reagans, I think the fences moving in for Vinny
Yeah.
Pasquantino. I think that there's some stuff kind of percolating there that they could definitely be a real legitimate kind of not necessarily contender, but a team that could cause some others some problems in a relatively weak, if we're being completely honest, AL Central. And then, I have the Yankees winning the AL East over the Blue Jays, but I don't think it's going to be a runaway by any means. That division, I think, is going to be very much a jump ball and going to be a gauntlet by any stretch of the imagination. Now, in terms of the wild card teams, and this is kind of where my bold prediction comes in. I have the Jays finishing second in the division and making the wild card. I have the Red Sox finishing third in the division and making the wild card. And I have the Baltimore Orioles finishing
Wow.
fourth in the
All
division
four.
and making
Yeah.
the wild card. I have four AL East teams in the postseason.
All right. I like it. Again, we're pretty similar. I have the Mariners winning the West, the Royals winning the Central as well. I think we're both pretty Royals pilled at this point. And I think Bobby Witt Jr., Michael Garcia, Vinny, Carter Jensen, Jack Caglione, they've got just an offense that's kind of ready to explode. And then, I think their rotation is obviously really good with Ragans, Lugo, and others there. And then I put the Jays winning the AL East. I think just the pitching depth will be a huge difference maker for them this season. And the Yankees, I mean, we saw it last night. The offense isn't going anywhere. But we'll kind of see what happens with their bullpen. So my wild card teams. I went two AL Easters. I went with the Yankees finishing first, the Red Sox finishing third, and the Tigers finishing second. Obviously, the Framber edition there. Kevin McGonigal. Come on, like how fun is that for them to have him up? Um, the one thing I'll say, I think I said this last year is just it feels hard to me to not have two AL Central teams make the postseason because of just how bad that division is. I mean, go look at the Twins opening day roster, and obviously we know the White Sox are going to struggle. As I said earlier, I think the Guardians are due for a little bit of a step back. Like it's the Royals and the Tigers to me are just going to be racking up wins all season, whereas a team like the Orioles, who I think maybe is better than those teams, just isn't going to have like kind of the same number of like free wins to take. So
Right, and I get that, I follow that, but I just think for me the Tigers are so it's Scooble and who, really.
Framber, Verlander was like a top 10 pitcher or a top 15 pitcher in baseball in the second half last year.
I'm sorry, I'm just not buying. I'm just not
Verlander,
buying what they're
you
selling.
want you want a bold prediction? Verlander 15 strikeout game against the Minnesota Twins sometime this year.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think that's unreasonable.
All right. Give me your American League champion and your NL champion and who wins the World Series.
I'm looking at the Mariners and the Mets as my
Ooh,
World
not
Series
all
pick.
right.
I think that the Jays are in tough to make it back to the
Yeah.
World Series. The only team to do that is the Kansas City Royals in the last, I believe it's been certainly since the turn of the century to lose and then make their way back. But even dating back to that, it's only happened maybe a half a dozen times. I like the Mariners. I think they're probably the second or third best team in the American League. And, as such, it's kind of, again, it's the postseason, anything can happen. And it just feels like they'll have an opportunity. And then in the National League, I think the Mets are a team that went out and made some smart moves this past winter. David Stearns is one of the bright minds in baseball, and it feels like with their unlimited wealth, they're certainly a team that could and should be really, really good this year.
Who did you say who wins?
I don't think I did. I'll let you take your two teams, and then I'll tell you
Okay,
who I think
okay.
my World Series champ is.
Okay. So, I mean, it's just, some recency bias. Obviously, what we do here is talk about the Blue Jays a lot. So I've got the Blue Jays going back to the World Series against the New York Mets. The Bo Bichette Bowl, if you will, would be, certainly an interesting storyline to follow. Um, and I'll say the Blue Jays take it, and I'll give you your World Series MVP is Cade Smith.
Oh, what an unbelievable season that would be. I'm gonna take the Mariners, and just for the Canadian angle, I'll give it to Josh Naylor as the
Yeah.
World Series MVP.
I get that there's a lot of like Mariners hate out there, but I do enjoy watching the Mariners and Cal Rowley and Julio Rodriguez and Josh Naylor and I think that you're looking at the Kevin McGonigal in Detroit, like watch out for Cole Emerson with the Mariners. So let's move on to our award predictions. Again, we can start in the National League. However, I did not tell you this, but we are going to alter the rules for these picks. No Shohei Ohtani, no Aaron Judge, no Paul Skeens, no Tarek Skubal. I think that if we were making these predictions with the intention of being correct, those four, I mean, we'd probably both pick those
So
four,
here's the
right?
thing. Here's the thing. I literally put AL MVP Judge, NL MVP Otani, AL Cy Young, NL Cy Young, Scuba Skins. But I did put in brackets my
Okay,
my
good,
my
good.
my underdog call it picks
Okay. So
for who else
let's
should
start
win MVP.
let's start National League.
So
Yeah, just run through the gauntlet. MVP, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, Reliever of the Year, Manager
the
of the Year.
one that I didn't, and I'm gonna see if I can kind of hide it. I'll see if you'll be able to see it on the screen here. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to show it to you. I'm not sure if you can quite see it, but I've put four question marks
Next to
next
Otani,
to Otani
yeah.
because who in the world could possibly dethrone Shohei Otani as MVP? I guess if I had to pick one off the dome, given that we've kind of put the Mets in this position, I do think that Juan Soto is a guy that could. He's a guy that has won MVP. Like this is a very, 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 very talented
He has
player.
not won MVP.
He's has won MVP.
No.
That's crazy.
He needs
I
one
thought he had.
eventually.
I thought he had.
He should have
But
in
this is
2020.
it feels like this is a guy that could go 50-50, something crazy like that this year. Not a guarantee by any means, but this is a guy that added stolen bases to his game last year and continues to hit for power. If it's not Shohei Ohtani and, the world comes screeching to a halt because of some unfathomable situation, then sure, I'll take Juan Soto as my NL MVP.
That's good. I had for NL MVP Juan Soto / Corbin Carroll. So I since you went Soto, I will go Corbin Carroll. Breakout year for Corbin. You want to talk about a guy who could do like a 30-70, like that's a guy who could do that.
That's a guy that could do something like what Ronald Acuna did a couple of years back.
All right, NL Cy Young.
Again, Paul Skeens is the obvious pick, but I'll take Freddie Peralta. They're headed to the Mets. That's a really smart team when it comes to developing pitchers. We've seen it over the past couple of years. They've really done an exceptional job of taking, talented pitchers and turning them into elite pitchers. I think that for Freddie Peralta, there's been consistent kind of issues here and there as to, his ERA will be inflated, but the strikeouts have always been there. And I think if the Mets can get the best version of Freddie Peralta, then he can and should win an NL Cy Young.
Yeah, I have the same NL Cy Young pick. Obviously, again, Skeen's kind of the guy there, but I think the move to New York will be good for Peralta. You mentioned kind of the organizational intelligence there. Obviously, that's a good point. And then, I think too, just New York being more of a pitcher's park too will certainly help. Not more than Milwaukee, but a pitcher's park will help Peralta. So
Yeah,
yeah.
he should fit in nicely. All right, I want you to take the AL ones first because I've had the chance to go first and you keep having
All
to
right,
repeat
all right.
after me. So you take the AL
Well,
first.
let's finish off the NL first.
All right, all right, all right, all
I'll
right, all
come
right.
through. So I have rookie of the year, reliever of the year, and manager of the year. NL rookie of the year for me, JJ Weatherholt broke camp with the Cardinals. Big fan of his game. I think to me, he's this year's Nick Kurtz, as in the guy who was kind of projected to go first overall in his draft, and then kind of fell off during the college year, and then of course ends up with the big league team like the year after he got drafted. So to me, he's not going to hit as many home runs as Nate Kurtz did just because of the type of player that he is. But I think the level of impact and the amount of playing time that he's going to have, he's going to burst onto the scene as a star.
Yeah, I'm eyeing up Sal Stewart on my end. I think
Yeah.
that's a guy with a lot of potential playing time. I don't think that he's got much in the way of hurdles. And I think in terms of just pure bat, already what we've seen, he got a pretty extended look last year and had some, real success. So certainly a guy I think that could even run away with the NL Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. NL reliever of the year. I think this one is kind of almost as layup-y as like Shohei and Skeens and Judge and Skubal, but I'll Edwin Diaz. Like, how many saves is he going to get this year in LA? I would imagine quite a few. I would imagine, he's going to provide them with a very nice piece that they didn't have last year.
Is he going to break the single season save record?
What is it? 72
I
K-Rod?
don't think, is
Or
it
is it
that high?
62?
I think it's 62.
So yeah, I mean, you look at Diaz, I mean, just obviously the stuff is great. Again, you want to talk about a guy going to a smart organization, going to the Dodgers certainly isn't going to hurt him. So, um, yeah, he'll fit in just fine in LA. And again, like last year where they had like so many late game collapses with Tanner Scott not being able to get the job done, I think Diaz will will be able to do so.
Imagine having Tanner Scott blow games for you and go, we need to fix this. Let's go get the best closer in baseball.
What a mistake by the Mets to let him go. I can't remember who I was reading, but they were saying that like, obviously the Mets lose Alonso, they lose Diaz and all these different pieces that they either moved away or left in free agency, and they were kind of saying that the one that they were kicking themselves over most was Diaz, which
Which makes sense.
makes sense. Yeah. You have a reliever of the year pick in the NL?
It is it is also Edwin Diaz. I think it's just such a layup, such a layup that it's hard to pick anybody else.
Yeah. Um, single season saves records is 62 with K-Rod in 2008. So, you think he gets there?
I think he can. I certainly think he can. If he gets into 65, 70 save situations,
Yeah.
I mean, how many of those is he gonna blow? Maybe half a dozen at that. Like he'll have enough leeway, if you will, that he could still kind of be shaky at times, and he'll still good chance he could
Yeah.
very well blow that record out of the water.
All right. NL manager of the year, I have Carlos Mendoza. I don't think, again, last year I picked Dave Roberts because I just thought, um, if like he's going to win one eventually, but again, I don't know how hard the Dodgers are going to push for like 100 whatever wins. So, I think Mendoza, the Mets, if they're able to bounce back and win the division and have this year where they have a Cy Young winner, an MVP candidate, and all these different things, I think he's a fairly easy pick as a guy who would guide them kind of back to that scenario. And yeah, I mean, obviously NL or manager of the year voting is always kind of who outperforms expectations. So I mean, you're looking at like a Torey Lavello, excuse me, with kind of the teams that I've picked in the postseason. But I think just the Mets being able to bounce back from last year would be a narrative point for Mendoza.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking narratives, and I mean, I have the Buccos in the playoffs, right? So Don Kelly's got to be my pick,
Did you just have to
almost by
look up
default.
Don
I
Kelly's
did,
name?
I did, I did. I totally did. Yeah, you know what? The Pirates. like I literally wrote down the teams for Manager of the
Yeah,
Year,
yeah,
right?
no, that's fine.
The
Sorry,
Manager
I
of the
didn't
Year
mean to
award,
expose you like that.
that's okay. The Manager of the Year award
I would
is
have had to
the
look it up too, so.
is I mean, honestly, how many of the 30 managers do you think you can name off the dome right now? I don't know if I can name more than 20.
I did a Sportle quiz last year and I think I got 27, so
Yeah,
or
I don't
28.
I don't think I'd get that high. Nevertheless, um, I think it's kind of the Who Shocked Us award, and it's either
Unless
gonna
it's the
be
2025 Blue Jays.
pretty much, and it's gonna end up being, I mean, in my universe where the Pirates make the playoffs, hard to see anybody except for them taking home Manager of the Year.
All right, let's close it out. The more obviously the side that we're more familiar with, the American League, obviously. Um, I'll go first, I guess, since I'll go first with the first couple here, and then I'll pass it over to you after. American League MVP again, no judge. I'm going to go Bobby Witt Jr. He will win an MVP eventually, and I think if we're both projecting the Royals to have this great season, there's kind of a narrative with that, and of course, he's just going to put together. He's going to be able to rack up numbers that are insane and great WAR totals with how good he is defensively. So I could definitely see him breaking through and knocking off Judge one of these years.
Yeah, that seems like the probably if you're not talking Judge, then if you want to talk who's most likely to get there, it seems like Bobby Witt Jr. I might add up someone else though, also in the American League East. I'm thinking Roman Anthony could be a guy
Wow,
that
yeah,
could this is a guy that looks like kind of Christian Yelich reincarnate, or if you really want to get a little fun with it, maybe even like a Joey Votto reincarnate. Uh,
yeah.
his just ability to just draw walks to get on base is very rare for a guy of his kind of freshness to the big leagues. It seems like a guy that if he can figure out how to not pound the ball into the dirt all the time, kind of like how Vladdy did when he first came up, could be a real difference maker for the Boston Red Sox. And if that is a team that is going to get into the postseason and be a difference maker in the postseason, then I think that you're probably looking at him ascending in some capacity.
Yeah. All right. American League Cy Young. Again, no Tarek Skubal. To me, Crochet is kind of in the same vein as Skubal, where it's like you can pick either or, and you feel good about it. So again, I also went away from Crochet, just to have some more fun with it. And I took Logan Gilbert of the Seattle Mariners. I think, a guy with good talent, good home park, good team behind him. All the things are lined up well for him this year.
I'm going to say Dylan Cease.
Yeah,
I think that if it's not going to be one of the obvious picks, then, to me, I think that the situation surrounding Dylan Cease should, in theory, be optimized for him to go deeper into ball games and accrue more innings. He should continue to strike out the world, and he'll have a good defense behind him, which should, in theory, help out the ERA. Now, mind you, he's coming from one of the most pitcher friendly situations in all of baseball. So hard to say whether or not he'll have that kind of success with the Blue Jays. But again, this is a guy that has had multiple top 10 Cy Young finishes.
yeah.
It's not like it's out of his realm of possibilities, range of outcomes to be this talented. And as such, I certainly think it's a possibility and an outside one at that. Dylan Cease could become yet another Blue Jays Cy Young finalist, and in this case, a Cy Young winner.
All right. You take Rookie of the Year first.
Yeah, I mean, Rookie of the Year in the American League. Uh, I'm thinking some Blue Jays flavor here, and I'm going to go with Kazuma Okamoto. I think that the polish that he has, he's
Yeah.
played for all intents and purposes, against
He's
maybe not
he's
major league
he's he's
talent,
just
but
not a rookie, which is,
not a rookie. I think it'll help him a lot, and I think that he's a guy that's got a clear path to playing time and is likely going to have some success. Now, is he going to blow the doors off like some other rookies could? Maybe not. Uh, Certainly, if the right rookie catches fire, McGonagall or I mean, excuse
like
me, Carter Jensen.
yeah.
These guys could, they have the upside that they could be dynamite of all dynamite. But I do like Kazuma Okamoto to be a guy that's a real contributor right out of the gate and is able to kind of parlay that into a Rookie of the Year win.
I also went Okamoto. I think all the reasons you stated, just the experience that he has, the high floor. I think that he's just going to post a really solid season, which is kind of why I didn't go anywhere with like my bold predictions with him or anything like that. But I think he's going to be a really good big leaguer. And, to me, obviously, it's tough to like put him as rookie of the year when, again, this is like a veteran coming over. But I think it wouldn't take, it wouldn't surprise me if you see like a Munetake Murakami, Tatsuya Mai, kind of guys who are in the same boat as Okamoto win this award. You mentioned McGonagall. Yeah, Jensen's a great pick as well. But I just think Okamoto has like the highest floor of any of these guys, and if things go right for him, like really, really nice season. So
Yeah, like if everything goes right for Munetaka Murakami, that's a guy
yeah,
that could, in theory, be even better than Okamoto. But also, this past spring, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the contact rate stuff was just as concerning as it kind of had been coming over. So,
yeah.
uh, he's not necessarily the sexiest pick with Kaz, but I do think that it's a guy that should probably win Rookie of the Year.
All right, AL reliever of the year.
I think Alejandro Munoz. I think that's my guy on this one. And I think that with the Mariners being a successful team this year in this predictive universe, seems like a guy that would make the most sense to take that award.
I'm right there with you. I got him as well. So, yeah, I don't need to add it much. Big strikeouts, good team, good park, similar to Logan Gilbert for my Cy Young pick. So, let's close it out with the sexiest awards of them all, the AL Manager of the Year. I'm almost going to wager that we have the same selection here.
Uh, well, I mean, I would say that's probably likely. Does this person manage in the American League Central?
They do.
They
First name
do.
Matt, last name Quattraro.
I think so. I mean, we both kind of just sung the praises of the Kansas City Royals, and for good reason. And again, this is the have they exceeded expectations award. So yeah, makes sense that the Kansas City Royals, who would be coming off a season where they missed the postseason, would ultimately earn it if they won their division.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of all the predictions. Do you have any other, bold takes around the league that you wanted to drop? Any other things that you're expecting that are outside of the awards or standings, that you are expecting to unfold in this Major League season?
I got one more for you. One more,
All
just
right.
kind of. This is just off the dome here. Worst team in the American League, not the Chicago White Sox.
I agree. I agree. I'll go with you. Worst team in baseball, St. Louis Cardinals.
Worst team in baseball. I think the Los Angeles Angels are just begging
The
to stay this
Angels.
year.
Oof. I was thinking the Twins. Did you see their opening day roster?
It's bad, eh?
Yeah,
We
not
don't
what
have the time to get
not
into
what
how
people
ugly it
are
is.
not what people are here to listen to. But Jory, this is always fun. Always doing this. We always go a little bit longer than our traditional episodes on this one, but always nice to drop some predictions and then go back and listen to how how wrong we are by the end of the year.
If you're not going long on a season preview extravaganza, then what are you going long on?
I the birdies. All right. That is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jory is at Jori Negin-Shecter. And the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the season.